The story, my DIL, said she couldn't stand me anymore and left. Then my son tore me apart too, begins with a wave of emotion that immediately pulls the audience in. From the very first line, it feels personal and real, like something that could happen in any family. The story introduces us to a mother who has spent her entire life caring for her son. She is loving, proud, and deeply attached to him. But as time passes and her son starts his own family, the dynamics in the house begin to change. When her daughter-in-law enters the picture, what starts as a hopeful new chapter slowly turns into a painful clash of personalities and expectations. The title itself already suggests heartbreak and emotional turmoil, but as we move through the story, we realize that the pain is not caused by cruelty, but by misunderstanding and the inability to communicate feelings in a healthy way. At the beginning, the mother believes she has done everything right. She welcomes her daughter-in-law into the home, wanting to be helpful and involved. She cooks, cleans, and offers advice, thinking she is showing love. But as time goes on, her well-intentioned gestures start to feel like interference to the younger couple. The daughter-in-law, who wants independence and privacy, begins to feel suffocated. She feels as though every decision she makes is questioned or corrected, and her frustration grows quietly until it finally explodes. The day she says she cannot stand her mother-in-law anymore and decides to leave marks the emotional turning point of the story. The house that once felt full of life suddenly feels empty. The mother, stunned and heartbroken, cannot understand how love turned into rejection so quickly. She replays moments in her head, searching for what she did wrong, but every answer only leads to more pain. The emotional depth of the story grows stronger when the son reacts. Instead of comforting his mother, he sides with his wife. This is not because he has stopped loving his mother, but because he feels trapped between two people he loves. The pressure of trying to please both has become unbearable. When he finally speaks up, his words cut deep. He tells his mother that she has made it impossible for them to live peacefully, that her presence feels more like control than care. For the mother, these words are devastating. The boy she raised, protected, and sacrificed for now seems to see her as a burden. This moment captures the painful truth of many parent-child relationships, that love can be misread as control, and care can be mistaken for interference. The writer presents this with heartbreaking realism, showing both the mother's confusion and the son's exhaustion. As the story continues, the mother's loneliness becomes the center of everything. Her son and daughter-in-law move out, leaving her alone in a house filled with memories. The silence is heavy, almost unbearable. Every corner of the home reminds her of happier days, the laughter, the dinners, the small everyday moments that once brought joy. Now the same spaces feel like ghosts of what she has lost. She sits at the kitchen table at night, replaying her son's words, trying to convince herself that he didn't mean them. But deep down, she knows that their relationship has changed forever. The emptiness forces her to look inward. Slowly, she begins to question her own behavior. Did she push too hard? Did she speak without listening? Did her love come across as control? These moments of reflection are what make the story so powerful because they show growth, not just sorrow. What makes this story particularly touching is its honesty. It doesn't paint anyone as purely good or evil. The mother isn't a villain, and the daughter-in-law isn't heartless. Both are human, both are hurt, and both are trying to protect what they think is theirs. The story shows how generational gaps, pride, and lack of communication can turn small misunderstandings into deep wounds. The daughter-in-law feels that she is constantly being judged, while the mother feels unappreciated for her years of effort. Neither realizes that both are craving the same thing: respect and love. The son, caught in between, becomes the bridge that breaks. His attempt to maintain balance ends up causing more pain to everyone involved. It's this realism, this portrayal of ordinary people struggling with emotions that are too heavy for words, that makes the story resonate so deeply with readers. The writing style itself enhances the emotional weight. The descriptions are simple yet vivid, and the dialogue feels like something you might overhear in a real household. When the daughter-in-law finally says she can't stand living in that house anymore, the line hits hard because it feels real. It's not shouted in anger, it's spoken out of exhaustion. That realism is what gives the story its quiet strength. The pacing is deliberate, giving readers time to feel the silence after every painful exchange. Even when nothing is said, the emotions are loud. The author uses pauses, memories, and small gestures to express more than words ever could. A look, a sigh, or the sound of a door closing carries more weight than long explanations. It's this subtlety that makes the story so moving. As the mother spends more time alone, she begins to realize how deeply her sense of identity was tied to her role as a caregiver. For years, her life revolved around her son, his meals, his happiness, his future. Once he is gone, she feels as though she no longer has a purpose. This part of the story is particularly emotional because it reflects a universal struggle many parents face when their children grow up. The transition from being needed to being left behind is one of the hardest emotional changes in life. The mother's quiet acceptance of this truth shows remarkable strength. Instead of becoming bitter, she starts to see things from her son's perspective. She remembers her own youth and how she once wanted space from her parents too. This realization doesn't erase the pain, but it helps her find peace. The story also offers an important message about communication. Much of the tragedy could have been avoided if the characters had simply spoken honestly without pride or fear. The daughter-in-law could have expressed her frustration earlier instead of letting resentment grow. The mother could have asked her son what he needed instead of assuming she already knew. The son could have tried to mediate with compassion rather than frustration. But that's what makes the story so real in life. We rarely say what we truly feel until it's too late. We expect others to understand our intentions without words, and when they don't, we feel hurt. The story is a painful but necessary reminder that love without communication eventually turns into misunderstanding. Another strength of this story is its atmosphere. You can almost feel the tension in the air, the unspoken words hanging between family members during dinner, the forced smiles, the heavy silence after arguments. The way the writer describes the house itself reflects the emotional state of its characters. In the beginning, it's warm and full of life. By the middle, it feels cramped and suffocating. By the end, it's quiet and cold, like a symbol of the family's broken connection. This shift in environment mirrors the emotional journey of the mother perfectly. It's subtle but incredibly effective storytelling. As we reach the final part of the story, the tone becomes softer, more reflective. The mother begins to heal, not because her son returns, but because she starts to forgive. Forgiveness becomes her way of moving forward. She realizes that holding on to pain only traps her in the past. One day, she decides to write a letter to her son, not to accuse him or make him feel guilty, but to tell him that she loves him and understands. It's one of the most emotional moments in the entire story. The letter is short, but every word carries the weight of a lifetime of love. Even though the story never reveals whether the son responds, that letter represents closure. It shows that love can survive even after words have caused deep wounds. By the time the story ends, the reader is left with a mixture of sadness and hope. There's no dramatic reunion, no perfect ending, just a quiet acknowledgement of how fragile family relationships can be. The mother has grown wiser, more peaceful, and the audience feels that even if her son doesn't come back right away, he will one day understand her heart. That's the beauty of the story. It doesn't promise miracles, but it gives you faith in time, reflection, and the healing power of love. It makes you think about your own relationships, about the things you've said in anger or the apologies you've never made. It encourages you to reach out before silence becomes permanent. What makes this story unforgettable is how relatable it is. Everyone has experienced tension within their family at some point. Everyone has felt misunderstood, unappreciated, or distant from someone they love. The story captures these universal emotions with honesty and grace. It doesn't lecture or judge, it simply holds up a mirror to real life. That's what gives it its strength. It shows us that behind every argument, there's usually just a desire to be loved and respected. Behind every harsh word, there's often pain. Behind every silence, there's usually fear of rejection. Once we recognize that, forgiveness becomes easier. In terms of emotional impact, this story performs beautifully. It stays with you long after you finish reading it. The simplicity of the language and the authenticity of the characters make it easy to connect with, but the emotions run deep. You can feel the heartbreak of a mother watching her family slip away and the guilt of a son torn between two worlds. The story's balance between sorrow and understanding is what gives it lasting meaning. It doesn't leave you hopeless, it leaves you reflective. You finish it wanting to call your parents, apologize to someone, or simply express love before it's too late. The conclusion of the story ties everything together with quiet strength. The mother, once broken and lonely, learns that love doesn't end just because people leave. True love is patient, forgiving, and willing to wait. The pain she experiences becomes a lesson in humility and acceptance. Her journey from heartbreak to inner peace shows the resilience of the human heart. It reminds us that every relationship can heal, even if the process is slow. The son, though distant, will carry his mother's love wherever he goes, and the daughter-in-law, though once angry, will one day understand the depth of that mother's intentions. The story closes on a note that is both bittersweet and uplifting, leaving the reader with tears in their eyes and warmth in their heart. In the end, my DIL said she couldn't stand me anymore and left. Then my son tore me apart too. Is more than just a family drama. It's a reflection on love, pride, forgiveness, and the passage of time. It teaches us that relationships, like delicate glass, must be handled with care. It reminds us that the people we love most can hurt us deeply, but they can also teach us the greatest lessons. It shows that love doesn't always look the way we expect, but it's always there in silence, in memory, in forgiveness. This story, though simple in plot, carries profound emotional truth. It is a masterpiece of quiet pain and gentle wisdom, urging us all to love more kindly, to listen more carefully, and to never let ego stand between us and the people who matter most.